sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo.
All right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. New intro. I hope you guys like that a little bit. I'm going to change up the video intro as well. At some point, I'll figure out, I get somebody to do that. But welcome, guys. Happy Friday. Shout out to all of you watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. It is Friday. I'm excited. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pumped. I'm like, cheers to the weekend. I want to go ahead and start out by giving shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll dive right in. There's a lot of comments. Holy crap. Shout out to Lorian. If Killer Mike is behind you, then it's probably a grift to shuffle people who want to fix things back towards the DNC or Zionism. Interesting. Shout out to CBC Voter. Happy Friday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on, Swirling Dervish? RFK and Killer, what? We'll get into that story. Shout out to Mark Johnson. Doobie-doobie-doo, Sabby. You are one likable MF. Keep it coming. Thank you so much. Shout out to Herberto, sends love. Greetings, Danielle, says hello, everyone. Shout out to Trauma Queen, says Sabby to 100K. We'll see, Trauma Queen. We will see. Trauma Queen is also a Sabby member. Shout out to Dr. Nick, who's a Sabby member, says hi, everybody. Greetings. Pineapple Juice says WTF. Also a Sabby member. Shout out to Miguel, who's a Sabby member, says peace. Greetings, Stefan. Okay, everybody's a Sabby member now because Crazy Puppet gifted a lot of memberships last night. Shout out Stefan, says hello from Denmark, everyone. Shout out to Hannah, says Robert, I don't think they're joining because it doesn't say join. That is correct, Hannah. Plus, I don't think RFK would ever come. I can't speak about Killer Mike, but I don't think RFK would ever come on this show. Shout out to Lawrence Johnson, who's a Sabby member, says Shaka when the walls fell. Greetings, King of Kings, says Darmok on the ocean, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Interesting. Shout out to Silver Surfer, says peace, love, Sabby. Shout out to Jacqueline, says hi, everyone. What's up, Jacqueline? What's going on? Terry Hinton says happy Friday, Sabby, and chat. Terry, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Shout out to Mark Pugsley, says Sabby. Greetings, Joe, says yesterday 81,500 subscribers, today 81,700, killing it. Congrats to Sabby and Eric. Thank you, Joe. Shout out to Larez, says hey, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Killer Mike really supporting RFK. I saw Barkley tear down Nikki's not racist delusions. Such a dumb, cringy thing to say, but hey, establishment still wants her. Hit the like. Hit that like button, guys. Start us off right. Shout out to Red 6, says hello, Sabby. Hope your Friday is going well. It is. Shout out to David, says Sabby, that was great watching Nikki was owned by Trump. Oh, Nikki. Nimrata. Shout out to Sean, says yo. Greetings. Here's the Crazy Puppet, says hi. Shout out to Sean, says Dre, ? No, that wasn't Dre, because I can't play that kind of music on here. But that actually, I have to look up the artist, but that was one of the songs that is one of the, what do you call it? The copyright free music that you can use. So I really do like that beat. Hope you guys like it too. Shout out to Retro Gamer, says good call-in show last night. Thank you, Gamer. Shout out to Sebastian, says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Randy, says hello, all my Sabby comrades. Shout out to MMB, anyone from NC. I think Notorious from North Carolina. Shout out to Borgie Boogers, uncommitted 2024. Shout out to Qualb, says hello, everyone. Greetings. I want to make sure I'm not skipping. There's Notori there. Greetings. Notori says, yas. Yes. And greetings. Mima says TGIF. Puff, puff, pass, comrades. All right, guys. I know there's a lot of comments, and there's another NC. Amanda says NC here too. Greetings, greetings, greetings. All right. Shout out to Roger Meadows for the super sticker. Says Maine, since you're not here till Tuesday, Sabby. I am doing Maine tonight, but I will be here Sunday since I didn't go live last Sunday. And shout out to Eric. Thank you for this as well. Oh boy. A Zionist and a Black capitalist teaming up. This already sounds like a disaster. It'll be interesting to hear you guys' takes on this because it's really interesting. It's getting there, folks. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies, and there's also members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate it. You're doing the damn thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? Oh, we're starting with a fun story. We're starting with a fun one tonight. I don't know if you guys have heard, but apparently Jamie Raskin and AOC have been confronted. Oh, wait, let me do the thumbnail. Sorry, I thought something was missing. It's Friday, guys. It's been a long day. Bear with me. All right, guys, what stories are we discussing tonight? RFK and Killer Mike collaboration. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you're not imagining things. Apparently, this is happening. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss AOC and Jamie Raskin have been confronted separately, and they're confronted about 2 different issues, but both of them have been confronted the same night. It's really interesting. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Nikki Haley versus Charles Barkley. Yes, Charles Barkley, a former NBA player, had some words. Had some words for Nikki Haley, and she had some words for him. We're going to get into that, and we're also going to reveal some recent news that may happen or maybe a possibility with Nikki Haley's campaign. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it's going to be pretty interesting if that happens. And last but not least, we're also going to discuss Chris Hedges, Julian Assange update. So apparently Chris Hedges was there in the UK and he was actually present at that hearing. So we're going to get the opportunity to hear from Chris Hedges about what he thinks is going to happen for Julian Assange. So it's actually nice to hear from someone who was able to attend the hearing, that was actually inside of the hearing. So it's really interesting, considering, you know, what Scott Ritter and I talked about recently. Who knows how long it'll be before they reach some type of a decision here. But we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed for this, not just for Julian Assange, but for all of the political prisoners, because the reality is when we're talking about like freedom of press, that affects all of us. It doesn't matter if you're a journalist or not. It matters to you as well, because how do you receive your information, right? So we'll get into that story as well. Okay, let's try this again. First and foremost, we're going to talk about what happened to Jamie Raskin and AOC. So both of them were confronted, but they were confronted about 2 separate issues, and they were confronted separately. It just happened to happen that way. Just happened to happen. But we're going to get started with Jamie Raskin first. So apparently, Jamie Raskin was actually hosting an event for his campaign launch. So obviously running for a re-election, and he was confronted by protesters at that event. These are pro-Palestinian protesters, and Chuck Modi actually was able to capture this footage. And this is exactly what needs to happen, you guys. Like, these congressmen should not just think they can walk into a re-election and not be held accountable, especially when it comes to something like genocide, right? So let's go ahead and get into the first clip of Jamie Raskin being confronted. This is wild. Here we go.
All right. We're going to talk about it. Thank you for coming.
Stop arming Israel. Stop genocide.
All right. All right. Are you?
You know what I like about this? Because they were so bold. They were bold enough to actually stand in the front. They went up to the stage with the signs, and Code Pink has been known for doing this as well. A lot of times during these confrontations, we see people stand up in the audience and yell, because a lot of times they're actually not able to make it to the front of the stage, to be honest with you. Some of these people get tackled. I've seen people tackled. It's wild. But they actually made it to the front of the stage, and they're demanding that Jamie Raskin, not just him, but also pass this on to his colleagues, to stop arming Israel. Powerful statement there. Also, notice how we have moved on from just asking for a ceasefire and now also saying stop arming Israel, right? I'd say the next step is start demanding equality for the Palestinian people.
You guys psyched to be here for the 2024 election? You know what? Let me just please leave her alone for a second. Let me just grab the bull by the horns. I'm sorry. Okay. Do you think?
Pause here for just a second, because I want you to take a look at the crowd, because I think that this is hold on. This is important. Oh, hold on. Let me come back. Right about here. Take a look at the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. See, once again, a lot of times at these events, you'll notice a lot of the volunteers are younger, right? The volunteers are over here next to the table. They tend to be younger. But the people who are actually donating, the people that are actually the ones keeping these politicians in positions of power, tend to be older voters, more so the boomer and silent generation, and they usually tend to be older white people. We talked about this before with Marcel Dixon in reference to why people keep voting for Jim Clyburn. And I said, well, why do Black people continue to vote for Jim Clyburn? And Marcel Dixon informed me it's not the Black voters. Most of the Black voters are staying home. It's the white liberals that are continuing to support Jim Clyburn. So you see, this is the demographic that a lot of the politicians are going after.
Do you think you're the only person who cares about people in Gaza and people in Israel? You think you're the only one? Okay, well, we've heard what you have to say. We've heard what you have to say. Let me say this.
You can't say that you care about the people in Gaza if you're arming Israel. If you're still sending weapons and funding to Israel, you can't say that you care about the people in Gaza, because the U.S. government is aiding that genocide that is happening in Gaza right now. Remember, they were the only country at the UN Security Council that decided to veto the ceasefire resolution. So it is us. It is the United States government.
You obviously have no idea what I've been doing in the Congress of the United States. You obviously have no idea. Let me start with that. Number two.
Okay, so that is the first clip. So he's saying that they have no idea what he does in Congress. I think they do. I think that's why they're there. And there's another clip. Again, shout out to Chuck Modi for capturing this. This is part 2, where he says, you just came to yell at people.
And I don't recognize you. You've never come to see me. You just came to disrupt a progressive gathering of true blue Democrats. And you're part of the problem now.
So you guys see what's happening? Let me finish.
You're not part of the solution. And I don't recognize you. You've never come to see me. You just came to.
I don't recognize you. You never came to see me. So first of all, it should be the other way around. The politician is supposed to go out and socialize and talk to their constituents. Why do the constituents have to come to him? Especially considering that he's in DC, how many days a week? Probably Monday through Friday, or maybe they go home on Friday. So he's in DC at least 4 days a week. So how many opportunities do they have to actually get to come to you at your office? And then they have to get through your staff just to have a meeting with you. Even if you call, I know this, we all go through this with all of our representatives if we're trying to actually get in touch with them. So why is it on the constituents to get in touch with you instead of you leaving your desk and going out into the community and talking to the constituents, not just the ones who are donating to your campaign? And then this part.
Disrupt a progressive gathering of true blue Democrats.
Okay, a progressive gathering of true blue Democrats. Notice how everybody can just use this term progressive now? Now, all of a sudden, the Democratic Party, you just say the word Democrat, and now all of a sudden you can use the word progressive. So do you see how the progressive movement has been co-opted by the Democratic Party? Especially anytime someone like Jim Clyburn can be a part of the Progressive Caucus. That movement has been completely co-opted by the Democratic Party. See how that works?
And you're part of the problem now. You're not part of the solution.
They're part of the problem, not a part of the solution. How are they a part of the problem when they're not the ones that are voting on these bills? They're not the ones writing legislation. But you, Jamie Raskin, are. You are the representative. You're supposed to represent the will of the people. When you do not represent the will of the people, they have every right to protest against you. They have every right to confront you. They have every right to show up at your campaign launch and voice the problems that they have with the way that you have operated in Congress. They have every right to do that. So that's Jamie Raskin. But there's more. Because AOC, we'll get to her in a second. Let's see the video of the other protester. One of the protesters spoke with Chuck Modi and said why she was protesting. And I believe she is Jewish, by the way. I want you to hear what she has to say.
Growing up, I and all of us who are Jews in America were taught never again. And to me, never again means never again for anyone. As Jews, we should be fighting more than ever to make sure that genocide never happens again to anyone, no matter who is perpetrating it. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, the movie Israelism, which describes how many American Jews are brought up. A lot of us have tried really hard to unlearn, a lot of us who are Jews, the propaganda that we were taught since we were children. I call upon all my fellow Jews to think about the values, think about Tikkun Olam, think about never again, and what your values really call you to do. Your values and our values as Jews should be calling us to fight tooth and nail with every fiber in our body, with every ounce of breath we have to end genocide. Growing up.
Okay, so I think that that's important for people to hear, because she's letting you know what she feels her responsibility is as someone who is Jewish. And I have to say, I think it takes a lot for those who are Jewish and anti-Zionist to actually show up to these events and stand up for the Palestinian people, because I'm sure that cannot be easy to do, considering the Zionist movement does not want them to stand up for the Palestinian people. It wants them to stand up for Israel. So I know I give them a lot of cred and shout them out, because it takes courage to do that. Now, the AOC one, this is a separate issue. She's actually she's being confronted by multiple people. And the first person who stands up to confront her, he's actually running against AOC. And he announces that he is running against her, I believe, as a conservative. But there's a couple of people that are going to stand up here. It's kind of wild, right? But this particular issue is about the will of the people in New York City and how they feel that people like AOC have taken them for granted, and instead they're giving more benefits to the migrants that came across the border. So a lot of people have been forcing their frustration about that. So this is a different issue. This is about the migrant issue in New York City. And I do want to remind you that Eric Adams actually has reached out to President Biden multiple times for help with this issue, because he said, we're running out of resources, we're running out of space. And apparently there's no help there from the Biden administration. So let's get into this one here.
A lot of environmental justice provisions to clean air in our schools, and also to implement climate policy in the education space. In 2020, the CARES Act passed, and in 2021, we started to see a lot of different.
Okay, so she's talking about the CARES Act in 2021. Remember what we said before about the CARES Act, how that actually helped corporations as well? Listen to this.
My name is Julian J. I'm running for Congress against AOC. Get out of here.
So this guy said he's running for Congress against her. What's also interesting is, wait till you see when this video actually pans all the way out, and wait till you see just how many people are in this room. That's what's really weird to me, is that AOC has difficulty getting in a bigger crowd now. Just to show you here, see how many empty seats? Look at this. This is how many people came to a meeting to see AOC. Interesting. Again, this is her district. Okay, so what's interesting about this statement from that gentleman is he told her that she doesn't care about, I guess, her constituents. The only people that she cares about are the migrants that have come into New York City. But what's interesting is AOC she flip-flopped on that issue. In the beginning, she was saying, yes, they should come in, yada, yada. And then when Eric Adams, he had opened up like a shelter for them with beds, etc. Then she pushed back and said, no, they should not come here. She has flip-flopped on that issue multiple times. Then she got criticized for making that statement. And then she said, we have to do what we can to help them. So I would say, in reference to what that guy is saying, I would actually call her out on flip-flopping and not being consistent on that issue, instead of just you want the illegal people to be here, etc. Because that's not something she really has control over. That's up to Mayor Adams. So I don't know where Mayor Adams is, but I'm pretty sure he should be hosting some type of event so people can voice their frustration to him. But that's the other thing. I think people need to understand how the branches work, because she's in Congress, but Eric Adams is the mayor. But if you're going to come at her for this issue, I say come at her for flip-flopping, because she's done it twice. So you notice something else, guys, when I zoom out right here, a lot of the people in this meeting are the press. And you can see the cameras as they kind of pan around here in the video. So it's like AOC's constituents don't even really, they're not like jumping up and down to come and see her as much as they were before when she first entered Congress. It gets crazier. Just wait for it. Welcome to New York, ladies and gentlemen. That guy said, why don't you make me shut up? Welcome to the Bronx.
You only represent the illegal aliens in
Clearly, this community, Astoria, Jackson Heights, also across the Bronx, clearly supports progressive immigration policy that welcomes all of us.
But you didn't support it. You flip-flopped last year. That's the thing that kills me. Like, she flip-flopped last year.
We clearly support anti-draconian immigration policies, and that is why you all, and I'm forever grateful and indebted to this community for supporting my representation in our Supreme process, because we have had enough. And as we've seen, the voices that are anti-immigrant in this country are very, very loud, but they're very, very few. And we have to look around and realize how many of us are here in support of our neighbors, and an acknowledgement of the fact that virtually almost all of us are descendants of immigrants or indigenous people or enslaved people as well. And so I thank you all so much. Let's move it on.
Yeah, very well scripted there for AOC. I say this, I think instead of kicking people out, I think it's just best just to talk to them and, like talk to them, like respond. She did the same thing when Jose called her out for voting for the funding for Ukraine, and she's supposed to be against that, etc. So I say instead of dragging these people out, let the politician actually respond to them, because that's the thing. Like, those are her constituents. They have a right to confront her, especially if they feel that she's not doing what she said she would do when she ran for office. And then in return, it is her job as a politician to be held accountable by her constituents and also to respond to them. And multiple times when she has been confronted, she is not willing to do so. Now, some say that's not the proper way to do it. Some say, why not just come by her office? Well, I've spoken to people that live in her district that have tried just that, and they get the runaround every time. You can't bring her on to left independent media, because she won't come on to left independent media, because she knows that she's going to have her ass handed to her, because people are very frustrated and upset. Instead, she'll go chat it up with the bros over at Pod Save America. So you have to understand, like, what are people supposed to do if they've tried every other option and she is purposely making it so that she doesn't have to be confronted by them? And here's the other thing. When we look at her favorability rating, this is interesting. Favorability rating of Congresswoman AOC among U.S. adults as of March 2023. So this was the most recent one that I could find. And I thought you'd find this interesting. Only 16% say they have, it's very favorable. 21% say somewhat favorable. 10% say somewhat unfavorable. But this is the highest here. 33% say very unfavorable opinion of AOC, and 20% say that they don't know. So for the people who have been saying that AOC should run for president, etc., once she is of age, I want you to pay attention to her favorability rating. Like her and Nancy Pelosi, they both have this problem. So it is obvious that people are not too happy with her. And I'm sure that has to do with some of the ways that she has chosen to vote. So we are seeing more people confront politicians. We are seeing more people be more vocal, and people have just had enough. And you have every right to hold your representatives accountable. And they have to know that you don't owe them your vote and that you don't have to vote for them again, right? But they also have to know that they have a duty to represent their constituents, which they have not been doing. And if you are a candidate that ran a grassroots campaign, you really can't use the excuse of, I took money from Big Pharma or I took money from the Israeli lobby. So that's why, that's who I actually work for. So AOC can't say that because she ran a grassroots campaign. So what is actually happening, though, is that the party that she went into is very much corporate, not grassroots for the most part. And they do answer to those entities. So that is really important for people to grasp. Let's go to some of the comments here. Oops. Thank you for the super chat, David. The problem with labels is that anyone can label themselves or others as whatever fits a narrative without the context needed to validate said label. That is a good point. Good point, David. Thank you, Christopher. Hi, Sabby, new subscriber. The genocide in Palestine led me to finally leave the duopoly. Everybody give Chris a big round of applause. Let's give it up for Chris. Give it up for Chris, ladies and gentlemen. All right, doing the damn thing. Thank you for spreading truth and clarity during times of propaganda and confusion. I appreciate you. Thank you, Christopher. And I think we all appreciate you too as well. Thank you, Eric. The anger that people have about the migrant crisis needs to be directed at the capitalist class more broadly. That is correct. It is the billionaires pitting the workers against each other. And what do billionaires do? What do CEOs do? If they can find cheaper labor elsewhere, they will take the cheaper labor. Then we have to worry about the issue of technology as well, right? Andrew Yang did warn people about this. I don't agree with him on other things that he had on his platform, but I agree with him about AI, that we can all be replaced. So you have to pay attention to what's happening with technology as well. Golden Crown says, I'm on Rewind, more news than the networks. Oh, thank you. I try to give people something a little bit different. You can watch local news and they show the same stories over and over all night. Snipey, just clap and say AOC, LOL. It's like WWE now. Yeah, wasn't it a sad showing like in that room? It's like, some of the people were like pressed. There's empty seats all over. Thank you, Violet Moon. Oh, AOC is in trouble wearing her designer clothes to face the peasants. Glad they gave her some heat. And let's give a shout out to Yantra Mandala, who just gifted 5 Sabby Sabs memberships. People have been doing gifts a lot, like yesterday and tonight. So shout out to Yantra. Thank you so much. I'm going to take this comment here on Rockfin. Let me bring this up here somehow. I don't know how Eric does this. Oh, there we go. I have to move myself over. Move it over there. Aha. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I want you all to think about this. When Cynthia was here last night talking about ending qualified immunity, the scope of what everyone was thinking was holding police accountable. But EQU is so much more than that. it is holding government accountable for violating your rights. That means any government official being able to sue them, like exercising your First Amendment. So when politicians and I have to come back to that because I know Eric is trying to get the other thing going there. Let me go ahead and remove these so I don't. Thank you, Eric. So when politicians and I think Roger might have dropped off there. Thank you for the tip, Hemp Car. Zionism was once voted as being a form of racism by the UN and a threat to global peace in a landslide vote. Zionists are anti-Semitic. They're killing Semitic people. Zionists are racist per UN, and it's now redacted. So you see how the Israeli lobby is able to come in and get the UN to change their definitions. This is how powerful they are, you guys. Thank you for this as well. Catholic priests get spit on in Jerusalem on a regular basis, ? The culprits sprayed the building facade with the words, Jesus is a monkey, and set the front door alight. Senior Catholic cleric, maybe you need clergy. If Jews want respect, they must respect others. That's coming from Haaretz there. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for this tip, Roger. Crony come to shut you down for violating your First Amendment right. You can sue them. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you. Based. Thank you for the super chat. Sparky says, denazify Israel. Yeah, we have to talk about this, just how powerful Zionist organizations can be if they can actually make the UN change their definition of what Zionism is and what it means. That's very scary and that's very concerning. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. Thank you. That helps me out with the algorithm. If you are new, don't forget to sub and share. Thank you so much, guys. We're moving on to the Nikki Haley story, the Nikki Haley and Charles Barkley story. Now, for those who are not aware, Charles Barkley was a former NBA player, but he's also, a commentator now, as many athletes do. Well, not many, but some athletes do when they retire from the sport. Well, apparently he's gotten into politics a little bit as well. And he actually had a discussion with Nikki Haley. And this is actually Gayle King, Oprah's friend Gayle, who is on the stage with Charles Barkley. They are really holding Nikki Haley's feet to the fire here. Also really weird that Charles Barkley is excited to support Nikki Haley. But Charles Barkley has always been, just I don't know, how do you describe it? It's just like a house Negro, like if it was during the time of slavery, Charles Barkley would be the one that would go snitch that the slaves in the field were trying to make an escape. He's always been that way. You can't really go to Charles Barkley and expect him to really get some type of support for him in reference to some type of what they would call a radical cause or something like that. Like, I'm pretty sure Charles is not about to go out in the streets and protest for the Palestinian people. He's always kind of been that way. So you can count on Charles Barkley to just sell out. Let's just put it that way. But in this particular discussion, he has some questions for Nikki Haley's previous statements that she made about the United States. Let's bring it up, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to start, Gayle.
All right, please.
Sir, I'm dying to vote for you. I mean that sincerely. I want to give all my energy and all my heart behind your campaign.
He said he's dying to vote for Nikki Haley. Do you guys know anyone who's dying to vote for Nikki Haley? Anyone? Anybody? I haven't met one person that is dying to vote for Nikki Haley.
But I was upset when you made the reference that you didn't think America had racism. And my question is, I was disappointed, number one, obviously, but I want to give you a chance. Did you say that because you felt like you needed to say that to the audience? Because I can say, I'm dying to vote for you, and that hurt me. So I would love for you to clarify that, please.
He dying. Why are you dying to vote for her? He doesn't even say why. Look at the look on Nikki's face. Nikki has this look on her face like, if I get this question one more damn time.
So first of all, I never said that there was not racism in America. There absolutely is racism in America. I said that America was not a racist country. And the whole point of that is, and Charles, you'll appreciate this, when I grew up, the only Indian family in a small rural southern town, we weren't white enough to be white, we weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. If my mom had told me that we lived in a racist country, I would have grown up never thinking I could be governor, never thinking I could be ambassador, never thinking I could run for president.
Pause. My parents told me growing up that this was a racist country. That didn't stop me from trying to achieve any of the things that I accomplished in my life. In fact, that actually made me want to fight harder to achieve what I wanted to accomplish. My parents did go to college. That didn't stop me from trying to go to college. So it just seems like to be Nikki Haley, it's like, so you want to tell people the opposite because you're afraid it will make people think that they can't accomplish goals that they want to accomplish. So it's okay to just openly lie? No, tell people the truth. I lived in your state, Nikki Haley. I graduated from the University of South Carolina. So let's talk about what happened in South Carolina while I was there. Let's talk about what happened with the Confederate flag when you became governor and you said you didn't want to take it down because it would upset some people. What people were you talking about, Nikki, when you said you didn't want to take it down because it would upset some people? Then it was after Dylan Roof walked into an AME church in Charleston and killed 9 Black people just because of the color of their skin. Then you said, we need to take the flag down. Then you said that. Then after that, you lost support from the same group of people that you were trying to protect their feelings when you first decided not to take the flag down. This is also part of the reason why she's polling so poorly in South Carolina. Now, she won't tell you that, but I will. Let's talk about the fact that when you ran for governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, one of the members of your own party said, we already have a raghead in the White House. We don't need another one in the State House. That was a member from your own party. That was during Barack Obama's presidency, in case you guys are wondering. So let's talk about that, Nikki. You cannot shield, especially children. You cannot shield them from the truth and reality that they are going to face today. You need to tell them the truth. Because you see, my parents telling me the truth and my parents explaining to me, you will have to work twice or 10 times as hard to get the same credit. That let me know ahead of time. So there was never any question where I had to ask, why didn't I get this and they got that? Why didn't this work out this way for me? And why did it work out that way? I never had to ask. I already knew. So you can't shield people. Let's go on.
But my mom always said, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. And it's amazing how that lesson on the playground played throughout my life, whether it was the corporate world, as governor, as ambassador, that once I was ever presented with a challenge, if I first talked about the things we had in common, people would let their guard down.
Let me tell you what she's really saying, right? Don't show people how you're different. In other words, in order to fit in with other groups, you need to downplay your differences and you need to behave more like them. I would never tell any of you to do that. You have to be yourself. and you have to be your full self. And if you're ever in a situation or an environment or organization or job or school where you feel like you have to hide who you are so that you'll be accepted, well, then that's not a you problem. That's a them problem. So it sounds like to me, her mom was basically telling her she needs to learn how to assimilate and hide part of her Sikh heritage. That's what it sounds like to me.
And then we could go towards a solution.
But Governor,
We
I think
have
most people
racism
heard
in
you
our
say
country. Our job should be,
Governor, I think most people heard you
Our
say
job should
that you
be
did
that
not
we
believe that
stomp out
America had ever
racism.
been a racist country. That's the problem. That we heard you
That's-
say.
that's not
that
what
is
I
what
said.
we heard. Okay. That's
No.
what we.
We're going to play what she said so you could hear it for yourself. Let's go back for just a second so you can hear. I'll put on the captions because there was interrupting there so you can hear what Gail was saying.
People heard you
Our
say
job should
that
be
you did
that
not
we
believe that
stomp out
America had ever
racism.
been a racist country. That's the problem. That we heard you
That's-
say.
that's not
that
what
is
I
what
said.
we heard. Okay. That's
No,
what we
so
heard.
I never said, I said that America is not a racist country. The premise of America was never to be a racist country, and that our number one goal should be to make today better than yesterday.
So here's another problem. She said the premise of America was never to be a racist country. How do you think this country was formed? Never to be a racist country? When you had colonizers kicked indigenous people off their own land and put them on reservations, kill most of them, and put the remaining ones on reservations? When you had over 400 years of slavery in this country, but it was never meant to be a racist country. When you had years of Jim Crow laws in the South of segregation, lawful segregation, but it was never meant to be a racist country. What are you talking about, Nikki? If it was never meant to be a racist country, even in 2024, we wouldn't have systemic racism in this country today. Today. What do you mean? Ay.
We need to stomp out racism wherever it exists. But if you go and tell kids that they live in a racist country, then you're automatically telling brown and black kids that they'll never be good enough.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Because you see something, Nikki, let me explain something. You still have the advantage of being white adjacent. And let me explain what that means. It means that no, she is not white, but she is closer to passing for white and being accepted by white people and organizations than a black person is. You know what I mean? So don't try to tell me, because I already know. Nikki Haley's father used to work at a HBCU in South Carolina, an all black college. But Nikki Haley, when her parents got a little bit of money, they sent her to the white private school. So you see, this is not to say she didn't experience discrimination. I'm sure she probably did. But what Nikki has to understand is even for someone like her, it is going to be easier for her to fit into those spaces than someone like Gail or Charles. Yes, LPA Films, proximity. Exactly. She has that proximity to whiteness. So no, don't lie to your children, ladies and gentlemen. Don't lie to your children. Tell them the truth about this country. Are we also supposed to shield the kids from knowing about what this government is doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza? Are we supposed to lie to them about that too? Are we supposed to lie to them and make them believe that Israel is actually being friendly towards the Palestinian people and that the Palestinian people are the enemy because that's what the Zionist movement wants you to say? Or are we going to tell our kids the truth? Nikki is basically telling you how to make things a little bit easier for yourself if you just ignore that these problems exist. Get out of here.
I want our kids to think that. I want them to know that, yes, there is racism. Yes, it is wrong wherever we see it. But that doesn't mean that the country is against you. That means that we need you even more than ever so we can stomp it out wherever we see it.
The systems in this country are against you. You have to know that. you have to know the criminal justice system in this country is going to be against you. You have to know that the prison system, the policing system is going to be against you. You have to know that. Black parents have to tell their children how to behave if they are pulled over by the police. None of my white friends have had to explain this to their kids. None of them. So you have to tell people the truth.
Okay, I really don't want to split hairs, but the exact quote that you said was, America has never been a racist country. I think that's the problem that people objected to. We're not disputing that what you're saying about America is not a racist country. Some people would argue with that. But we're saying that the comment you made that particular day was that America has never been a racist country. And I think that's what caught people off surprise, caught people off guard, and surprised
And I don't think
people.
and I don't think the premise of America was to be a racist country. I think that they said that, you know, every man was created equal with life.
Pause. Like, you got two black people sitting here, okay? The intention was never to be a racist country. Who built the country, ladies and gentlemen? It wasn't like Africans just woke up one day and said, let me get on a boat and go to North America. Let me go get paid and do some of this work over there. No, they were thrown into ships. The ones who didn't even make it to North America, because some of them died because of dehydration and disease, were thrown off the ships, okay, into the water like trash. Then they get to the country, the ones who did make it here. They weren't paid. They were whipped, beaten. They were sexually assaulted, the men and the women. They had chattel slavery in this country. The slave trade happened for over 400 years, even after they were told to stop doing it. Charleston, South Carolina, your state, Nikki Haley, was still importing slaves after they were ordered to stop doing it. And they built this country. And you want to sit here and say the premise of the country was never to be racist. It was racist from day one. Now, I don't know who she's trying to pander to. You already losing in South Carolina, boo. That primary is tomorrow. So I don't know if you're trying to get back in good graces with the people in South Carolina that you pissed off when you told them to take down that damn flag. But this is BS.
Liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and getting it to the place it needed to be was America was a work in progress. But I don't think that the basis of America was that we were a racist country.
Pause as well. She's talking about the Constitution or Declaration of Independence. When she talks about all men are created equal, she leaves out an important piece about that. That was referring to white men, not even women. That was referring to white men, and mainly white men that owned property. Nikki Haley knows this. You grew up in South Carolina. They teach you about this in South Carolina. So you cannot sit here and pretend like that applied to everybody, because it did not. What a mess.
I think the goal was always to have freedom. Now we stumbled along the way, and we've got some parts of our history that were not pretty. But we got past that. I don't think that our founders wanted us to have a racist country. I don't believe that that's the basis that America sits on. So that's what
if you want to talk about what the founders wanted, first of all, go back to where she said we got past it, because we got some things to say.
But I don't think that the basis of America was that we were a racist country. I think the goal was always to have freedom. Now we stumbled along the way, and we've got some parts of our history that were not pretty.
Stumbled? The goal was always to have freedom? No, it really wasn't. Because see, the thing is, the idea was not for slaves to be integrated into the rest of society as everyday working people. That is why when the slaves were freed, they were just kind of like, well, what do we do with them now? That was never the premises. Like when you brought Africans over to this country as slaves, that was free labor. And for people who sit back and say, well, no, I don't talk about reparations. That is divisive. Divisive for who? that makes some people feel bad, hurts some people's feelings. And why does it hurt their feelings? Why does it make them feel bad? We need to talk about that, because a lot of people talk about the workers and we talk about labor in this country. You're talking about 400 years of free labor that was never compensated for. Now, that was supposed to happen with General Sherman's promise, right? 40 acres and a mule. What happened to that? Girl, you done, girl.
But we got past that. I don't think that our founders wanted us to have a racist country. I don't believe that that's the basis that America sits on. So that's what I was saying, is I don't think the premise of America was ever to be a racist country. I think it's always to be the best country with the most freedom that allows anybody to be whatever they want to be without government getting in their way or anybody else getting in their way.
When she talks about what the founders didn't want, you want to know something that the founders did not want? We're talking about most of the presidents owned slaves, so I don't know what she's talking about back then during that time. You want to know what else the founders did not want, the founding fathers? They didn't want political parties. They did not want a Republican Party. They didn't want a Democratic Party. They didn't want political parties, because their fear, which actually came to be, was that people would divide themselves and do the bidding for the party instead of the bidding for the people. So let's see what she said. This is when she made the announcement that she was going to run for president. And it's Nikki Haley at the RNC. America is not a racist country.
In much of the Democratic Party, it's now fashionable to say that America is racist. That is a lie. America is not a racist country.
Look at the look on her face when she says it. It's just like, you know, it's just a front.
This is personal for me.
Oh, Lord.
I am the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. They came to America and settled in a small southern town. My father wore a turban. My mother wore a sari. I was a brown girl in a black and white world. We faced discrimination and hardship, but my parents never gave in to grievance and hate. My mom built a successful business. My dad taught 30 years at a historically black college. And the people of South Carolina chose me as their first minority and first female governor.
And that was after one of your own in your party called you a raghead and said that he did not want you there. She doesn't tell people about that part. But Sabby remembers, I remember, and there's something else crazy that is happening with her. So remember I told you, why is she still like staying in this race, knowing that obviously she's going to lose tomorrow after South Carolina is pretty much done, because she doesn't have the Republican base. Like, she basically has support from independents and some people who are Democrats that are supporting Nikki Haley as well. But she doesn't have enough of the Republican party base to actually win these states against Donald Trump. Right. So I said, what's the plan? Is she going to try to ride this out and then break away and run as independent? Well, guess who is considering doing that with her? Dean Phillips. I kid you not. This came my way. Listen to what he says about that possibility.
Wouldn't all your listeners be more compelled by maybe Nikki Haley and Dean Phillips getting together on a unity ticket and actually doing for the first time, perhaps in our country's history, what most Americans really want, which is cooperation, collaboration, participation, decency, common sense, leadership? So I'm going to turn the question that way, because there's no way Nikki Haley will become the nominee in the GOP. And the fact of the matter is, right now, the Democratic Party doesn't want competition and seems to want to coronate Joe Biden. So I think the real question...
So as an independent, let's say she ran as an independent, you would run as her VP?
I think it's a conversation that Ambassador Haley and I should have, if that's what this comes down to, in the event of a Donald Trump victory this November, which is almost certain if Joe Biden is the nominee. I think any American who opposes that should celebrate, encourage, and inspire an alternative that can actually win and lead our country in the way that people want. And I think anybody, including myself, should keep open minds and hearts about that. I hope Nikki Haley does. And I think America could be very well served by some type of a bipartisan ticket that restores faith in government and, most importantly, demonstrates to the world that America can work together and restore its extraordinary brand around the entire world. And that's my aspiration, Chad, one way or another.
Thank you.
So I'm a little bit confused because him and Nikki Haley, their policies are nothing alike. Now, Dean Phillips just did this interview with Brianna Joy Gray on Bad Faith, and he's advocating for like Medicare for all. Nikki Haley's not advocating for those types of things. Like, why would you even consider doing a unity ticket with Nikki Haley and your policies are not aligned at all? And two, Brianna Joy Gray asked him during that interview if he would be interested in running as an independent, breaking away. Obviously, he's not going to win in the primary against Joe Biden. Would he be interested in doing that? And he said no. He said because Trump is too much of a threat. Now, Dean is singing a different tune. I don't know what's happening here, folks. But to me, I could understand if your policies align, but their policies don't align. So I don't understand why you would join with Nikki Haley as a unity ticket. What is the unity? What are you united on? Israel? Is that the one? Probably just Israel. It's crazy out here, folks. It's crazy out in here in these streets, but these things are actually happening. It's wild. Thank you for the super chat, David. Stating this late, but AOC's net worth is 2018 was 8,000. Is that negative? Oh, negative $8,499, according to Open Secrets. AOC's net worth in 2024 is apparently 13 million, and that's according to Forbes. Selling out pays. That is very interesting. That happened quickly. Shout out to Meteor Dreams. Nikki Haley is like many. We're not gonna say Indians. We'll say Nikki Haley is like herself or whatever. She wanna be white. Thank you, Jeffrey. Sabatronic. Oh yeah. I like that name, Sabatronic. Thank you, Perry. Nikki, if this isn't a racist country, why don't you use your real first name? Perry with the killer beats. Stop it, Perry. I can't take it. Stop it. I can't take it. He comes with the knockout punch. Woo! Meteor Dream said, Sabby, so then by that logic, are Mexicans white adjacent? There are a lot of white and light-skinned Mexicans, I ask out of curiosity. Yes. And interesting with the Latino community, because they're different shades, right? There are Afro Latinos and there are white Latinos. So it depends because there's different shades. Deneen says the HBCU gave her father an opportunity when no one else would. And this is how she thanks us. That's a good point, Deneen. Very good point. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin Hemp Car. German kids are taught what their parents did. The German problem, collective guilt. Because imagine kids have to go through Little Rock 9 and have to endure, but white kids can't hear facts for 2 minutes. Intolerable, unrelenting psychos. They should make us all puke and they should be in gulags for the rest of their lives where they can't hurt anyone anymore. Thank you for this tip as well. Hitler let 60,000 capitalist Jews go to Palestine with most of their wealth under the transfer agreement, yet they got reparations for the Holocaust. Even Israeli newspapers say 10,000 of Holocaust survivors live in poverty yet. It's like only the rich got the money. That was 6 to 12 years of Hitler. Colonialism in Africa, Australia, and in the Americas is still happening 400 years plus and zero reparations. That is a really good point there, Hemcar. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the super chat, Jeffrey. RBN resonates all the way to Aboriginal Australia. Thank you for that. We're getting into our next story here about Killer Mike and RFK. Now, this was interesting to me. We're going to start off with a recent poll, which may be shocking to some, in reference to Black voters. Now, Case Study QB, shout out to Case for doing the damn thing. He actually tweeted this, and I said, people need to see this poll. Choice for president among African-American voters. Check this out, folks. Joe Biden, 56%. Donald Trump, 15%. RFK Jr., 13%. Cornel West, 13%. First of all, Joe Biden went from having like 86% of the African-American vote or support to 56%. You have almost half of African-American voters that participated in this poll willing to support and vote for someone that is not a part of the Democratic Party. I hope this is very revealing to people. I hope this wakes people up because I've been calling it. I really have. But Joe Biden, some people are going to look at this, and Democrats are going to look at this and they're going to paint this positively for Joe Biden. They're going to say Joe Biden has 56%. See, he has the majority. And I would be like, see, he used to have like 86. The fact that Donald Trump, this is another thing, the fact that Donald Trump now has 15% of African-American support, that's the most I think I've seen for a Republican since I've been old enough to vote. Okay, so how does Joe Biden allow that much percent, that 15%, how does he allow that to go over to the Republican Party? Maybe it's his policies, and maybe it's the way that he's treated the American people. Then you have RFK Jr. with 13%. We're going to get into this one. And you have Cornel West with 13%. Now, what RFK Jr. and Cornel West actually share in common, they're both independents, and they both lack much for ballot access. RFK Jr. has ballot access just in Utah. Cornel West has ballot access in Utah and Alaska and Oregon, if I remember correctly. So the ballot access is going to be the hurdle for both of them, right? But still, how is it? How is this happening? I'm going to show you how. RFK Jr. is now, like, in some way, shape, or form has teamed up with Killer Mike. I don't know who reached out to who, but there is now a channel on YouTube called Blacks for RFK. Now, this is similar to what Killer Mike did during the 2020 Democrat primary when he was supporting Bernie Sanders. And he actually had this group called Black Men for Bernie. He had T-shirts and everything. Now it's Blacks for RFK. So RFK Jr. has been hitting the barbershops a couple of times. We saw him with Matt Hofra. This is a separate barbershop, talking to Black voters. And people have been mentioning this. But I want to tell you something they're leaving out that is very important. The first thing that you need to know when you look at this video, RFK Jr.'s barbershop talk with Killer Mike and influencers. Okay, even if you look at the description, it says here, influential voices. This episode features a lineup of prominent influencers: Stevie Baggs Jr., Josh Powell, Felix Murray, Big Bank, TJ Tillman, B High, and of course, Killer Mike does the special appearance. So why am I telling you this, ladies and gentlemen? Because it is important for you to understand this is not RFK Jr. going into a barbershop talking to everyday African-American voters. These people are influencers. So just keep that in mind. Some of these influencers are popular on TikTok or Instagram, etc. But I want you to know who he's talking to, and I don't want you to assume that these are just everyday dudes just kicking it at the barbershop and RFK Jr. just decided to stop through the neighborhood. No, these are influencers. So let's get into the first part I want to discuss with this particular interview here. And this is Brian B. Hightower, and he's going to talk about some of the things he's worried about in reference to poverty. Listen to this.
Hightower, my main issue is quality of life in America. There are a lot of people working 40 hours a week and they're still homeless. What do we do to make sure that everybody is able to have a suitable lifestyle that is something that the American dream has afforded a lot of people, but a lot of people are not able to live that right now. I see a lot of people that are working 2 and 3 jobs, still living in the car. Who's taking care of the kids? That means that the kids become latchkey, they run the streets, and it's a lot easier for them to get into crime. What are your thoughts about just the quality of life in America and what you want to do to make it better?
So that's a really good question. There are, all of them ask like different things, but that's a really good question about the quality of life. And along with that becomes living wage, etc. I want you to hear RFK Jr.'s response to that. I'm actually turn this up a little bit.
I guess the way to summarize that is that we have destroyed the middle class in this country and the working poor. And right now in this country, 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they had an emergency. And if you are part of that cohort, it's more than half of our country, and the engine light comes on in your car, it is the apocalypse. Because you can watch your life circle the drain. You know you're not going to be able to pay the mechanic. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your job, and then you lose your home, and then you end up on the street. I was in San Francisco. I tried the Monsanto case in San Francisco in 2019, and we tried 3 cases in a row, and we won 289 million in the first one. These are people, American gardeners who got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer from Roundup. The first one was an African-American school janitor who had a sprayer. We won 289 million for him. We won 89 million in the second case, and then 2.2 billion in the third case. And I was in San Francisco for almost a year trying those cases. And every day I would go down to the gym in the morning in Union Square. Union Square is like, it's like Fifth Avenue. It has all the big shops like Nordstrom's and De La Valle and Prada and Gucci and Banana Republic and Gap. People come from all over the world to shop there. I went back a month ago and every one of those the stores is closed. It's just acre after acre of plywood, and the streets are filled with people, homeless people, and nobody wants to shop there anymore. And I was out doing research. What causes the homelessness? Why is it that California, which only has 12% of the population, has 50% of the homeless people? And the reason, there's a lot of studies on it that show it all has to do with housing prices. There's a famous writer called Matthew Desmond who's done all the research.
Let's pause, because let me just get straight to the point. So those things that he's discussing there are absolutely true. Yes, the housing prices have a direct link to homelessness, right? Not just in California, but all across the country. But what was very telling about this conversation, and I watched the entire interview, it seems like to me, if I'm bringing up the quality of life and I'm talking about poverty and you're in a Black barbershop, the obvious response is you need to repair what has been done to the Black community. RFK Jr. has a tendency, I think, sometimes to start telling like these long stories, and it's good for people to hear about what you have done, right? Like the Monsanto thing, like that's important, I think, for people to hear. However, like this is a very simple response. There needs to be repair. However, RFK Jr. does not believe in cash reparations. And that's another thing. I'll show you his website as well. When we look at the racial justice section for his website, that's another thing that you're going to have to understand. He doesn't believe in that. And it's easy to point out all the problems, but all of these things could have been answered just by that one word: cash reparations for African Americans. African descendants of slavery in this country. It's a debt that's owed, and that wouldn't just help out descendants of slavery in this country. That would also help out those of you who were not descendants of slavery. I think this is what a lot of people don't understand. What do you think is going to happen to that money? It'll be put back into the economy. That'll help the housing market. You're a small business owner, you own a business, it's going to help you too. Everybody benefits from that. But he doesn't agree with that. Now, let me give you a little bit of pushback here. Remember, you have survivors of the Holocaust, right? They received reparations from Germany, and I believe rightfully so. That makes sense. But at the same time, this country sends, $3.8 billion a year to Israel before October 7th? They've been sending billions to Ukraine. So I tweeted this out earlier today. For the people that push back and say it's divisive, you can't help one group and not help the other, I just told you it will benefit everybody in the long run. But those same people have no problem with us giving billions of dollars to Israel every year. They have health care for everybody. They have free college. We don't even have those things right here in this country. So you see, I want you to pay attention to how they decide where money is going to go and who they are going to help. This is what I want to get across to people. So I said earlier this morning on Twitter, I said, Black people, our reparations are going to Israel and Ukraine. Think about that. So that's the simple answer to this question. I'll let him go on for a little bit more here.
Research on homelessness, and he says, this epidemic that we have in California is about to spread all the way across the country because housing prices are going up so fast. And 2 years ago, the average cost of a home in this country was $215,000. Today, it's $400,000. And the primary reason, or one of the primary reasons for that, is you have three giant hedge fund or investment funds: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And those companies own 89% of the S&P 500. The biggest companies in the world. BlackRock it manages $10 trillion. It's the third largest economy in the world, this one company. And they have now decided, they own all the business, the big business in this country. They've now decided they're going to own all of the land, the agricultural land and the residential. So they're buying up residential housing, and everybody has a story of a friend who, just was about to go into escrow on a house, was about to sign a contract, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer 20% greater than the asking price. And you're wondering, who just took my house from me? And then.
So that's true. That point right there is very true. It happens here in Massachusetts. It's been happening here for, I would say, a couple of years. And that is part of the reason why we have difficulties finding a way to purchase a single family home, because it is true. They'll come in with the all cash offer. So who do you think they're gonna sell to? The all cash offer or the couple that needs the loan? So yeah, he's right to call out BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corporation, them too. He's right to call them out. That is a big part of the problem. But I think one of the things that need to follow up with that is, okay, so what's the solution? As yourself running for president, what would you do to fix that? Something that I have noticed this time around, and I don't know what it is, but I have noticed with the candidates this time around, everyone is they're discussing the problems. But when I would ask the question, how would you fix this? What would you do as president? It seems like a lot of these interviews and discussions that are happening with presidential candidates, that piece isn't being accomplished. Like, we all know what the problems are. We know housing is an issue. We know poverty is an issue. But what people need to hear is, how are you going to fix it? And instead, what people are saying is go to their website. But no, you should be able to say this, though. You should be able to just come flat out and tell people, here's how I would fix that problem. So that is something that I've noticed. That's not just an RFK Jr. thing. That's been happening with a lot of the candidates I've noticed this time around. Now, there's another piece of this interview because there's different parts that I want to get into. This is the part where Killer Mike comes into the scene. And I will tell you, Killer Mike is already receiving pushback for the statement that he makes in this discussion about what to do with men that impregnate women. And we'll get to that. He's going to get all into it. And he's getting a lot of pushback. And I'm going to explain to you why. But in comes Killer Mike. So again, you see, this is Killer Mike, who was once a part of the Bernie thing. And I know we all have moved on from Bernie. But it's kind of weird. It's like, because RFK Jr. doesn't believe in a lot of these universal policies. He doesn't support universal health care. I thought Killer Mike supported that at one point. I don't know what's happening here, but I think maybe he may be attracted to RFK Jr.'s campaign because he's thinking about Black capitalism. So Killer Mike he's not anti-capitalist. He'll tell you that. I think Killer Mike tends to want to, promote Black business and promote Black banks, things like that. So that could be what attracted him to RFK Jr.'s campaign. But he says something here that apparently has rubbed people the wrong way. Let's get into that.
I wasn't gonna jump on camera, but y'all done said some interesting shit.
Let's go, bro.
Really quickly, because what you asked for was a solution. It's something that I have been thinking about. I'm just jumping. This is not an official endorsement, although I do like a lot of what's been said here. So I'm gonna stay out the way. But just in matter of child support, to help you better understand, child support in the case of what you're saying, that you were married to your children's mother.
Yeah.
Virtually. Well, most 70% of Black children are born out of wedlock. So child support is against you day one when you're a Black man, more likely, because more likely you're not married. Now, and this same thing I tell my daughter's boyfriends: don't get her pregnant. If she has a big, huge family that's going to take care of this baby, you're going to piss her off, and she's going to go file for benefits. Or she's going to need them in the case her mother needed them when she was a kid. Me and her mother were together. We were not married. But her mother signed
You
up.
actually have this conversation with your daughter's boyfriend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell them, I say, no, understand now, she is from a great family. Now, I know this is not the case for every girl, but she's from a big, huge family, lots of aunts. She's going to be okay, but you're going to piss her off. You're going to leave her for another girl. You guys are going to fall out of love. She's going to play a lot of Chris Brown records, and she's going to say, fuck it, I'm going. But I say that because me and her mother were together from day one. Her mother did not work. I did work. Her mother, I put through school. I did not put myself through school. I did everything I could to make sure that in case I died, this woman would be okay with my children. She signed up for TANF, welfare, that type of stuff, which helps. It helps to bridge, especially when you're a young family. We know our welfare system has been constructed in a way that excludes men. It gave women an incentive not to have men in it.
Right.
It actually says, we'll come through your house and we'll search your house and if
Look for
there's children in
shoes,
there.
yeah.
So you're kind of set up from day one.
Hold on, you didn't know they looked under your bed and checked?
Yeah.
Okay.
But ask somebody who worked for Hood. That's why Ben Carson shouldn't have been running Hood. God bless him. I want him to work on my brain, but not control my house. So back to child support. I think the solution is this, and I'm out your way. 2 years. Young woman gets pregnant as a teenager, young man and woman get pregnant. This is the 2-year plan. First 2 years are debt-free. You don't have to pay the government anything back. So she doesn't get to drag him into court and the court doesn't say, you owe us money for investing in your child through food programs, through early Head Start programs. Because in those 2 years, the boy has the option, or not even the option, he has the demand of the co-man to then go to a trade school. You have to go to a trade school, which incentivizes the United States to do it because we need more tradespeople. We don't have enough carpenters, we don't have enough electricians, we don't have enough people building roads. In my community, the girls are...
Pause. So the problem that some people have with that statement that Killer Mike made, that the men, like if he got a woman pregnant, the first 2 years would be debt free. So the first 2 years, he wouldn't pay child support. Instead, he would go to trade school. So some of the... Let me get the comments. I looked at one of the comments. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. First of all, like, nah, take care of your kid. Like, what do you mean the first 2 years debt free? No, take care of your child. You made that kid. So that was weird to me. And then two, the other criticism that some people had was like, well, what about the women? You know, what do the women get to do those first 2 years? Obviously, you know, they would be taking care of the child. But I mean, while he is at trade school, somebody still has to pay the bills. Because I don't know, you guys let me know if you know of a trade school that pays you to go to the trade school. But the thing is that somebody still has to pay the bills to take care of the kid. So that would mean that the woman, the mother, would have to go to work and raise the kid. Like it, because it, I don't see how this is that much difference, because it's just like, you still got to pay for the bills. So that didn't make sense to me. But let me show you what he says. And RFK Jr. is eating this up too. Watch this.
Going to college and graduating. They have no men to marry because the boys are not going to college in the same way. My teachers were married to a tradesman. My teacher, who we call doctor, her husband owns a locksmith company. Her husband was a carpenter, was a mechanic. So they had a good life. Their kids went to school, right, the same schools we went to. I think that the incentive to solving the child support problem and a part of solving our infrastructure problem is to incentivize young boys who have gotten a girl pregnant. You must now go through 2 years of trade school.
But wait a minute.
But let's pause. So it's like, incentivize young boys who got a girl pregnant. You must go to 2 years of trade school. Why not back up for just a second and let's focus on the whole, you know, idea of getting a young girl pregnant? Why not? And there's other things that go along with this. It's not just the fact of you got someone pregnant. It's also the fact of, which I wish they would have brought up in this discussion, but the fact that Black women have the highest mortality rate in reference to maternal care. So you have to remember that as well. Serena Williams went through this and she's rich. So for people who say it's just an insurance issue, no. Right. So there's other things that you have to deal with as well. And you got to pay them damn medical bills. Let's be real. It's expensive to have a child. To physically have a child in hospital, it's expensive. So I guess my whole thing is like, why not focus on maybe not trying to why not use some damn protection? I was trying to say this as nice as I could, you guys, and as clean as I could, but why not use some protection? Why not use some birth control? Why not? When I say protection, both of them, okay, the guy and the female, why not maybe focus on that first? And yes, accidents do happen, but it almost seemed like to me, it's just like, yeah, if you knock some woman up, first 2 years, you go to trade school. And so you don't have to pay child support those first 2 years. Maybe focus on not just intentionally knocking women up and you don't want to pay for the child. That's just kind of how I look at it. That's me. Listen to RFK's response.
Okay, I like what you're saying.
Let me give you the rest of the answer.
Okay, go ahead.
After that boy graduates, you get a further incentive if you and the girl marry. If you and the girl marry, we'll give you these incentives: zero finance home loans, something out of HUD besides an apartment with a leaky faucet and rats and roaches in it, but incentivize marriage, which then strengthens our community, the Black community, and strengthens the greater community, because now you have more American marriages, you have people with stronger financial stability, and you have tradespeople married to women of education, and you begin to recreate communities like what Auburn Avenue was, what Edgewood was. I believe you could do this from the executive order, because the money that funnels down from the feds through the states to help mothers, then it can be attached, well, we're not only helping mothers, we're helping fathers too. If a boy gets a woman pregnant, not only does she receive TANF, I see your face, right? Good idea.
Pause for a second. So I get what he's saying. I guess he's trying to promote the family structure, right? So he says, then we can incentivize marriage. If you get married, then you get this, like help with like buying a house and all this. But guys, here's the thing. You have to actually want to be married. It's like, if you guys get married, then you get this, this, and this. Okay. So are you getting married because you actually really love this person or in love with this person and you want to be married, or are you only getting married just to get those incentives? And then how long do you have to stay married before you can divorce that person after you receive those incentives? Because marriage is not a game. Marriage is not a joke. Like, you have to want to get married. You have to want to be married. And someone shouldn't have to offer you all these incentives for you to say, okay, I love you, let's get married. I don't know. Like, it would make me feel some kind of way. Like, I seriously would be looking around like, are you really in love with me? Or are you only proposing to me so we can get these incentives? I don't know, man. It's a mess.
If a woman receives 10 or she receives this, the boy now has a must. You're federally required now to go to trade school. And in those 2 years, what you put out on the other side is a person who's trained, a person who has an incentive to marry, and a person who becomes a taxpayer and not just a taker of taxes. I think that's the answer.
I just got to jump in because Mike just took us to church, and Mr. Penny, that would also help with my issue and helping to reduce the number of abortions in the Black community, because now
I knew she was on the sideline.
I just think that this is being looked at from the wrong angle here. Like, you either want to get married or you don't want to get married. And not everyone wants to get married. Some people have actually been in relationships. They have a lifelong partner and they never got married. Actually, what's her name? Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell are like that. They never got married. Oprah and Stedman never got married. But I think that's because Oprah don't want Stedman to get her money. That's a whole nother thing. But so, I mean, marriage is not for everybody. It's not for everybody. So I'm just like, look, let me just sum up this entire conversation and just say, why don't you just repair? Why don't you just repair, pay reparations, instead of coming up with all these different loopholes to figure out how to help the Black community? That's kind of how I look at it. But not everybody wants to get married. Now, there's another part. RFK Jr. also had a conversation with Black women, so a panel of Black women. But again, I want to point out to you so you know who these people actually are. This segment here, RFK Jr., Angela Stanton King, and influential women discuss the current state of politics. So it even says here in the description, again, these are influencers: Alexia Adams, Angel McCartry, Shay McCrae, Tatania Davenport, Crystal Jordan, and Angie Stanton King. So again, I have to tell you this because I don't want you to assume that these are just everyday random Black women in the community that just decided to stop by and RFK said, let me have a conversation with you. No, these are influencers. This conversation should be had with people in the community that are not paid influencers. I'm sorry, but it's just go walk into the barbershop, not someone's barbershop that's an influencer. Just go to the hood and just go talk to everyday people, not the influencers. That's what rubbed me the wrong way. But this is the conversation here with Black women. Listen to this part.
It's now about accrued financial knowledge. My father recognized that if he wanted to start a business, he didn't know anything about business. If he wanted to start a business, he could call one of his friends from the Harvard Business School and say, how do you do this? But in that community, they did not have accrued business knowledge. So people didn't know how to do inventories. They didn't know how to do accounting. And all of these issues were just mysteries to them. What my father did is he organized the business leaders in New York City to commit one day a month or one day a week to Bed-Stuy and go there and work with local business leaders to teach them how to do these things. And I'm very proud of what happened in Bed-Stuy when my father walked those streets. All of the stores on Fulton Street and Atlantic Avenue were boarded up, virtually 100% of them. The closest grocery store was 75 blocks. It was 3 bus rides. So imagine that. If you're a mother with a toddler and you have to go, if you want to go shopping, You got to take that toddler on 3 bus rides, and then you got to carry your groceries back in the sack with that baby for 3 different bus stops.
He's right. So he's correct here, what he's talking about. And if you haven't lived it, then you may not know about this. But like, my parents are from Baltimore, Maryland. My parents grew up in the projects, in poverty. I lived in Baltimore for a little bit, but I didn't really grow up in Baltimore. We traveled a lot, moved around a lot because my dad was in the military. But I will say this, and you'll see it in Boston too. Unfortunately, when you live in these neighborhoods that are a food desert, which there's many of those in urban areas, if you want to go to the grocery store, a lot of times there may not be a grocery store in your area. So yes, you will have to get onto if you don't have a car, you'll have to get onto the bus, the city bus, and then get off at a bus stop, get onto another bus and another bus to get to the grocery store. You'll see that a lot in Dorchester here in Dorchester neighborhood in Boston as well, which doesn't have as much public transportation access in reference to the subway. So a lot of times you have to take bus to bus to bus, get your groceries, and then come back. Like it's kind of like all day. Like, what else are you going to do that day? Right. So it's a mess, and it is a problem. What he was saying right before this was the fact that people need to know how to be able to actually start a business. And a lot of times, most of us just don't know. Regardless of what color you are, most of us don't know, but it's even more prominent in urban Black communities and rural low-income Black communities. His family had the privilege of having the right connections and that Harvard network to tap into, to reach out to someone and say, I want to start a business. How do I do that? The reality is most people don't have that network and don't have those connections. So he is correct about what he's saying here. What I did notice about this conversation, once again, and they're talking to a panel of Black women. I'm not hearing reparations. Again, I'm not, because here's the thing. How do you fix the problem of the woman having to take the 3 buses to get the groceries and things like that? If you do cash reparations, right, she can get out of that situation. Otherwise, we are just recycling poverty over and over and over. And poverty is a cycle, and it's very hard to break. He'll continue on here.
That's what, poverty empowers more poverty. And that's what was happening. We moved a grocery store, a Pathmark, into the neighborhood, and it changed the character of the neighborhood. We made capital available. My father pressured the banks to end the redlining. And you saw commerce explode in that community. So today, every one of those stores is occupied. There's an entrepreneurial energy in that community, and it's beautiful, and it's become the model now for 2,000 community development corporations around this country. And that's what I want to do. One of the things that I said to Crystal.
So he wants to do that for Black communities. And I'm not against that. I will just say, please be careful with what grocery store you choose to bring in, because from my experience, certain grocery names like Whole Foods, once they come in, here comes the gentrification. Because the landlords raise the rent because there's a Whole Foods now, and that tends to attract a certain demographic of people, and people who have the money to shop at Whole Foods. Let's just keep it real. The landlords then increase the rent in that neighborhood. The people who grew up there can't afford to live there anymore, and they're pushed further out. Now, instead of taking 3 buses, you got to take 4. It happens. So I would be careful with what type of grocery store you bring in there. The point that I think he's trying to make here is that people have to be taught how to do these things. And the old way of just go to college, just educate yourself and you'll learn, that is not enough anymore. If you don't have the right networks, if you don't have the right connections, if you don't have the right people that are willing to come in and show you how to start a business, how to become an entrepreneur, you'll be lost. Every now and then people get lucky here and there, but for the most part, you'll be lost. So in other words, you have to have somebody that is willing to do it. So I agree with him with that. I think that's a good idea. But again, as I said before, all of this could be fixed by repairing the issue. Now, let's go to this. There's one more clip, conversation of RFK Jr. with African Americans that is happening as well. And this is a discussion here. Timcast actually shared this here. RFK Jr. is asked about Palestine at his Black History Month Q&A. So he's rejecting again the apartheid label. So again, ask yourself, who are the people in this room? And this is why I keep saying these are not everyday folk on the street that he just walked up to have this discussion. These are certain like influential people that he's having this discussion with. And my advice to RFK Jr., if you're really trying to bridge that gap with the Black community, so to speak, you need to talk to everyday Black people, not just Black people that are influencers. That is it. And people can see right through that, by the way. Listen to this.
And right now we're seeing what I'm going to say is a genocide and apartheid. However, when I use that language, I'm deemed anti-Semitic. Where do you stand on Palestine, the freedom of Palestine, and the people of Palestine?
When you use the term apartheid, and you're not applying it to all the surrounding lands, which have severe apartheid. There were.
Sorry, let me go back just a little bit because I forgot RFK Jr.'s volume is a little bit lower than theirs. I don't know why.
Apartheid. However, when I use that language, I'm deemed anti-Semitic. Where do you stand on Palestine, the freedom of Palestine, and the people of Palestine?
When you use the term apartheid, and you're not applying it to all the surrounding lands, which have severe apartheid. There were people complain about the Palestinian refugee problem and say that was caused by Israel. Well, there were 750,000 Palestinians who left in 1948 during the war. Most of them were not evicted. They left because the Arab countries told them to leave.
Pause. So again, I encourage all these men that are in this room to go do their own research and maybe talk to other people that are not Zionists, because the thing is this. RFK Jr. is leaving out a significant part about this conversation. He's saying the Palestinian people that left on their own. These people were slaughtered. There were people killed. There were people who were, you want to talk about sexual assault, that were sexually assaulted. These people were pushed out. And even if you don't even want to go all the way back to 1948, you can look at what's happening to Palestinians in the West Bank right now. See, RFK Jr., this is why he won't have this conversation with people who know about this subject. Because the thing is this. If he's saying that it was not apartheid, the people left on their own, then how do you explain the IDF and other Israeli settlers, because it's not just the IDF members anymore, pulling Palestinian people out of their homes in the West Bank today? How do you explain how Palestinian people have to walk on certain streets? They're not allowed to take certain roads in the West Bank. They have certain passports that say which areas they're allowed to be in, and that's not apartheid to you? So the thing is, again, I think RFK Jr. knows the truth. And I really think that somewhere along the way during his campaign, I think the Israeli lobby got a hold of him and already let him know what was up. And on top of that, he has been denied Secret Service protection. So I think that's really what this is all about. I think he's in the back pocket of the Israeli lobby, and that's why he's parroting these talking points. But what makes me even more frustrated is that he is saying to a room of Black people that it's not apartheid. It is apartheid. We also have economic apartheid in this country. So the fact that he can sit there in front of a group of Black people and just parrot this blatant lie, I would highly encourage all of you. You don't even have to, you want to listen to Katie Halper, Max Blumenthal, Norm Finkelstein about this issue. They're very educated about this issue. And unlike RFK Jr., Max Blumenthal has been to Gaza. RFK Jr. has not been to Gaza. So for him to sit here and tell this lie, it's a mess. I hope they don't believe this.
They wipe out the Jews in peace and then bring them all back, or because they were scared of the war. Very few of them were actually evicted. But in the Arab nations, it was a total ethnic cleansing of Jews. 900,000 Jews were expelled.
Notice how he always pivots back. He takes the focus off of Israel and brings it to the Arab nations.
What happened to those? The poverty of the Palestinian people is not because of Israel. It's because of their own leaders, of the leaders of Hamas. Hamas declares in its covenant that its purpose is the annihilation of Israel and the genocide of every Jew, not just in Israel, but all around the world. And by the way, I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm against Hamas, and I think Hamas.
You're not pro-Palestinian. If you were pro-Palestinian, you wouldn't be telling these lies that it's not an apartheid state. You know, you're not pro-Palestinian. You're pro-Israel. When you walk down the street with the Israeli flag with your friend Rabbi Shmuley, you are pro-Israel. When you sit up there and you tell lies about the Palestinian people, you are pro-Israel. You want to bring up Hamas, but you don't want to explain why Hamas was created in the first place. If there was no occupation, if there was no oppression, you wouldn't have had a Hamas. And RFK Jr. leaves that piece out intentionally. For him to sit there and just blatantly lie. I really hope black people are not fooled by this. I really do. I sincerely hope they look into this yourself. Look into it yourself.
It's done more to hurt the Palestinian people than any force in the world. Right. The Palestinian people have gotten more money from the international aid organizations than any nation in the world. We built after Europe. We rebuilt 17 countries that have been devastated by World War II. And we spent about, in 2023 dollars, $628 per person in those countries. We've spent now, the international community, $8,300 per Palestinian. Why is Palestine so poor? The reason they're poor is because Hamas steals that money.
The reason why they're poor, see, again, also the blame always goes back to Hamas with him. The reason why they're poor is because Israel made them poor. Israel occupied those people. Israel has rules. There are rules against the Palestinian people in Gaza where they can't even grow certain food. Olive trees. Like, it's freaking ridiculous. So he's still going with that pampered narrative. They received this much money. They received da-da-da-da. What about the billions that is sent to Israel? You wouldn't have to send them any type of aid. You wouldn't have to send them any of those things if Israel didn't occupy them. So it's just, when I see that percentage of the 13% with RFK Jr. for Black voters, that really makes me cringe, because it tells me people are not really paying attention to what this guy is saying, or they are paying attention, but they just don't care. So I'll show you what he's really saying. When we talk about racial healing on his website, check it out, folks. He talks about the civil rights movement, and he talks about his plan, targeted community repair. This will be available to devastated communities across the country, not just Black. The criteria will be around need, not skin color. See that? But this is on the racial healing page. So this is why I call this out when people say RFK Jr. has a reparations plan. This is not a reparations plan. However, because there are so many Black communities in need, this program will channel significant resources towards the rebuilding of the most devastated of communities. Okay. Listen to this. Prison reform. You can't reform prisons. Not in this country. It goes on to say he'll seek the early release of nonviolent offenders. He will reorient the prison system around rehabilitation rather than punishment. But ladies and gentlemen, in order to do that, you have to remove the for-profit prison system. So you have to get rid of for-profit prisons. Police reform. Kennedy will reorient police to serve, not occupy Black communities. Oh, he knows what occupy means now. To keep neighborhoods safe rather than harassing their residents, the federal government will work with localities to change police culture with the pro-community incentives, training in de-escalation, and cooperation with neighborhood organizations. Isn't this some of the same things that Cop City said they would do? And they're basically trying to militarize the police. You have to cut down, you have to pull the tree from the root. You can't just cut off branches or cut the tree, which is what he's trying to do with police reform. You have to pull it up from the root. We need entire new systems when it comes to some type of policing in this country. It's corrupt to the core. Working class, working poor. Because Black people are disproportionately represented among the working class, RFK Jr.'s policies will uplift working people, will disproportionately help the Black community. Now, don't that sound like the same thing that Bernie Sanders said? So here comes the universal ideas, right? Problem is, even with these universal policies, Black people are still at the bottom. This is the same problem that Bernie Sanders had and didn't want to listen to. So it says here, these include a $15 minimum wage, tax credits, child care subsidies, and home buying programs. The $15 minimum wage is already outdated. It just, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what to say. They voted on the $15 minimum wage. What was that, like 2 years ago or over a year ago? And obviously the Democrats voted against it. But the thing is, that is outdated now. We're going with old Democrat talking points. Tax credits are okay. Child care subsidies. What about child care for everybody? What's with the subsidies and the credits? Home buying programs. We have home buying programs. So he would probably, hopefully he's talking about a different type of home buying programs. What type? What would you do differently? Federally backed 3% mortgages will extend home ownership to millions of Black families. Not if you can't come up with the down payment. That goes back to reparations. See, this is why schools, it goes on to say, RFK's policy team is looking at ways to revive these schools, Black schools in cities and inner suburbs, while also supporting parents to choose other options. What does that mean? What do you mean? What are you going to do? And then it goes to addiction. RFK Jr. will launch a nationwide network of low-cost or free addiction healing centers on organic farms available to anyone who sincerely wants to heal. I also include addiction to be a part of healthcare. So if we had universal healthcare, that, in my opinion, would include therapy and addiction treatment. So again, this goes back to healthcare. Why not just be for universal healthcare? Then it goes on to say with the youth, RFK Jr. will expand youth programs to make them available to every young person who wants to learn skills while serving society, the environment, sick, elderly, and so on. Okay, but again, this is for everybody. Everybody. And then free ID for all American citizens. It says RFK believes that these policies can be accomplished only by uniting Black and white working people in conscience and compassion. So this to me, and that's the last one, this to me is not reparations. It's definitely not cash reparations, but he also always said he'd not for cash reparations. These are basically a couple of policies that he has that actually benefits everybody. And I'm not saying you can't have policies that benefit everybody, but this is focused on equality, not focusing on equity. This is the same issue that Bernie Sanders had. Bernie Sanders wanted to focus on equality. That's great, but you also have to adjust or address equity, which is not happening here and didn't happen with Bernie Sanders either. So yes, all of these things would help everybody. But the problem is, even after doing all of this, Black people will still be at the bottom if you do not actually implement reparations. That is how you get to the equity piece. And that's how you close the racial wealth gap. You don't close the racial wealth gap by canceling student loan debt. A lot of Black people don't even have student loan debt because they didn't go to college. So we got to talk about these things. Dr. Sandy Darity made it very clear in his book. You're not going to close the racial wealth gap with baby bonds. That was another one that people thought, right? So you can still have those universal policies, but when we're talking about equity, that's going to be accomplished by reparations. I'm just keeping it real. Now, some of you have told me that you are incredibly disappointed with third-party choices, or you got your hopes up and then you got let down. And some of you have said, what do we do now? Well, my comrade Rome from RBN actually answered that question. I want you to hear what Rome had to say. Just for some of you that may be a little bit down, feeling a little down and out.
Somebody had asked me, what do we do now? Who do we vote for now? Because they was feeling let down with the situation with Dr. Cornel West, and they still feel iffy about Dr. Jill Stein. And I'm here to tell you guys, nothing will change by voting for these people. Because the goal isn't to win. The goal is to get over the threshold so they can get federal funding, so we can, pay for advertisement, pay for ballot access, pay more people to get on the ground, whatever it may be. It's a marathon. And we are just getting started. So just because I have my disagreements with somebody like Dr. Cornel West, I wouldn't tell you not to vote for him. Because I understand that it's way bigger than him, it's way bigger than us. And, sometimes we just have to prepare. And sometimes we have to build mutual power. See, I'm not a voter. But I would never tell you not to vote third party, because we need mutual power. We need people with those political mindsets to go and take over these jobs. Now it's up to you to also hold these people accountable. And that's all we have been doing over here at RBN. We have been holding Dr. Jill Stein accountable. We have been holding Dr. Cornel West accountable. Everybody who say that they are for the proletarian, we have been holding them accountable. For Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, AOC. And we're going to do the same thing with third parties. We're going to make sure if they want to speak our language, they're going to get it right. But just take a deep breath. And remember, the fight is way bigger than you. We're not fighting to save our asses. We're fighting for the future generations. And you're going to want to have something in place for them, at least something. Now, you could go my route and not vote at all. Get your ass out here on the ground. Start organizing with people. If you're disabled, you can still organize. The computer is your best friend. You can connect with thousands of people a day, like-minded people who want the best for others. Now, it's a lot harder than just voting and waiting 4 years, but your hands will be on it. You done put your blood, sweat, and tears in it. And you're gonna feel good when you see what you have accomplished. It's up to you.
So something that Rome pointed out here, and I think, some people really appreciated hearing this, because the thing is like some of you guys have told me on calling, like, what do we do now? Where do we go? What do we, the thing is like, first of all, one of the things we continue to say at RBN is that nobody, I say this multiple times in the show, nobody is coming to save you. So never look at a political candidate as a hero. And two, there should always be some type of local organizing effort that you can be a part of as well. Some people don't vote, and that's their thing. Now, some people have said they don't want to vote for anybody because they're disappointed by all of the third party or independent candidates. And my whole thing is like, check me out. If you live in a ballot initiative state like I do, it would be a mistake not to go and vote for the ballot initiatives. You don't have to vote for the president of the United States, but you can still show up and vote for the ballot measures because that is going to impact you directly. That's your state. Also, you get to see how your state is spending money. So that's another thing that's interesting as well. So that's why we cover the ballot initiatives on this show as well. So you know what's happening, what is going to be on your ballot, what has passed, and how your tax dollars in your state going to be spent too. So that's one thing that you could do. But the other thing is we always say organize. We do mutual aid for our RBN. We all have different chapters in our respective areas. In fact, I'll be meeting with the Boston chapter tomorrow. So we all do different things, whether it's feeding people, giving people clothes. Rome has done so much for Tour for the Poor. He's been to Flint. He's been to Jackson, Mississippi to give people water when the government did not. And so those are other ways that you can get involved, or you can join an organization in your area that's already doing those things. There are mutual aid organizations all across the country. You can go to mutualaidhub.org and you can see which ones are near you. But there's always something that you can do. There's always something else that you can do. It doesn't have to be just, I hope we get a great candidate and they're going to fix everything, because they're not going to fix everything. I remember I thought Obama was going to fix everything. I remember I thought Bernie could fix everything. But at the end of the day, there's this section of the government that's called Congress. And they're the ones that write legislation. And they're the ones that are passing these bills. So you have to remember that at the end of the day, no one person is going to save you, but we can save each other if we work together in reference to organizing, doing community, mutual aid, and helping each other. And that's just something that we have learned over at RBN. And I wasn't always this way. I volunteered when I was in high school. I've been volunteering since I was a teenager, but I used to think that there was someone coming to save us. I thought Obama was going to be that hero. I think a lot of you may have, right? So what have we learned over the years, folks? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, et cetera. They answer to the military industrial complex and corporations. They answer to Wall Street, and they always put us last. So that's something to think about. So when Rome said, get your ass out in the street with me, help me, when I'm traveling across, I come into your neighborhood and I say, hey, I need some help with this kind of stuff. He said, hit him up. But I think, I saw people become disappointed over the past 2 weeks. And I told Roger Meadows the same thing. I was starting to notice that, once again, people were starting to feel like one person was coming to save them again. And this happens every election cycle. But remember, election season eventually ends. And when it does end, the people who are still organizing, the people who are doing mutual aid, that is continuous. So always remember that. All right, let me get that comment on Rockfin, Eric. And then I'll get to the YouTube comments as well. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. A Black Star Project study on the racial wealth gap calculates that $1 circulates 6 hours in the Black community, 20 days in the Jewish community, 30 days in the Asian community before leaving. Sabby, should we receive reparations? We shouldn't be so quick to spend outside of our community, but instead have it stayed locked in our community to become economically independent. That's a good point. But remember what I said on call-in, who owns those buildings, right? So when we talk about like Black owned businesses, great, but who owns the property? A lot of times the property is owned by someone that is not Black. Thank you for the tip, JVB. Sabby, you are right to ask Junior to speak with everyday people, not just influencers. That is the acid test, not just propaganda. Thank you for that, JVB. And thank you for this, Roger. Yes, birth control, but if not, then, as I heard Tez Figaro say on an X Space last year, in case his in case his pullout game was weak. Sabrina, we really have to start voicing for in our community, yes, Black business ownership, but community cooperative Black business ownership. There are just people who want to be the head Negro in charge. Nothing on Black organized labor. Black voters don't fall for this. That's a good point. And thank you for this as well. Sabrina, I don't know. He could be walking himself right into a trap because there's a good percentage of men from our community who are associated with the Nation of Islam, where a lot of them are 5%ers. So they might feel some kind of way about this. Oh, looky here, another liberal, all lives mattering us. That's a good point. And thank you for this, Hemp Car. Our healthcare system doesn't heal people. It's designed to keep you running around from department to department. Wonder who or what will help. Commercials today say, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic condition. What? We have parasites now in the first world country, and why wouldn't the doctor be telling us we have it? Dr. Matulu Shakur used acupuncture for addiction like the Viet Cong. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for this, Roger. Sabrina, I've been saying for the last 2 to 3 years, stop expecting these politicians who you vote for to do it for you and start organizing to put initiatives on the ballot so you can vote into your state constitution and into state law and repeal of the state law, the things that you want at this point. If you're still asking, it means you don't yet have the will to do it. Well said there, Roger. Let's go to these comments here. Thank you, Kinky. Israel, Ukraine, Venezuela, Haiti, Congo, Yemen, Iran, Russia, China. Phillips and Nikki are on the same page, Sabby. Oh, I see what you're saying there, Kinky. Richard says, why do I feel like RFK Jr. would go blackface if Shmuley told him to? You guys are terrible tonight. Harold says, Black people need to wake up. Joe Biden should be at 10%. Come on, people. Yeah, I agree with you, Harold. I agree with you. Bud says RFK Jr. is an elitist con man who has been compromised. Interesting. Thank you, Ruben. Fiat currency gave you statutory laws and sold you in slavery, citing the statutory laws it gave you and called it a democracy and a favor. Satanic. That is interesting. James says ridiculous, killer bugging. What he's Booer T. Washington now. You're making fun of Killer Mike. Everybody's making fun of Killer Mike in the chat. Thank you, Janice. Off topic, but 3/17 is Save Palestine Day in Ireland. They are having a huge march that day. Thank you for that information, Janice. Thank you, Jeffrey. I believe Young MC said, keep it in your pants. Oh my God. Thank you, Frank. Who let Killer Mike out? LPA Film says Angela Stanton, that's her name. She is working for RFK and arranging these panels. She used to work for Trump. What? Wearing turbans on her head and rocking African gowns. She is a damn grifter. Wow, 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 wow. Oh my gosh, LPA. Thank you, Janice. We got past that. No, can't get past at it until all that upside labor has been compensated to the descendants of those forced to work for free. Well said, Janice. Shout out to Cooper for gifting 5 Sabby Sabs memberships. Whoop, whoop. And thank you, Bougie. I'm lost. Who am I allowed to follow? Well, you don't always have to follow someone, Bougie. Sometimes you can leave. Thank you for the super sticker, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. And I have one more story for you guys. This is Chris Hedges. Interesting conversation here. So we did cover Julian Assange day one. This is basically a recap of actually what happened at the hearing for day two. Now, Chris Hedges actually was able to go inside of the hearing. So a lot of the people that I saw so far were outside of the building, but apparently Chris was able to go into the hearing itself. And so I want you to hear what Chris said in reference to the Julian Assange hearing. Let's go ahead and bring this up. Again, this was after day 2.
Ruling. Chris, you were present in the courtroom. Any general thoughts or impressions today?
Yes, I would caution against being too sanguine about the attitude of the judges, although of course Craig is right. I covered the trial of Chelsea Manning, and the judge was not only respectful, but I would even at certain points describe as motherly, and then knifed Chelsea in the back. So the demeanor is interesting, but it may not be significant. I think we do have to remember that in the afternoon they kept hammering the defense about the failure to adequately redact and put people's lives in danger. This is the canard that the U.S. uses as a big bludgeon to go after Julian, although, of course, even they have had to admit that they have no evidence that anybody was actually harmed.
Let me just pause here for a second. So Chris Hedges is speaking about the judge. Now, if you saw the interview I had with Scott Ritter, one of the things that Scott Ritter said that he was concerned about was the judge, right? So Chris is actually saying, like, maybe not be so focused on the demeanor of the judge. Sometimes the judge can seem, kind of cranky, and you think that they're definitely going to rule against someone like Julian, but sometimes it can go the other way, like he said in reference to Chelsea Manning. So they have different opinions in reference to the judge, but if you didn't see that interview I did with Scott Ritter, go check that out. And Scott Ritter goes a little bit deeper about what he thinks is going to happen. But here we go.
But they asked that question several times. I think the most interesting aspect for me, again, occurred in the afternoon, and that I think was the correct focus by the defense on Vault 7, because he's not charged. Vault 7 was the leaking, what was it, 2017, Craig?
Yes.
Yeah, to the leaking of the CIA hacking tools, their ability to use our smartphones, even our cars, internet, TV, anything, even when they're off, to monitor us. And that really triggered the fiercest animus against Julian. That's when Mike Pompeo, shortly after that, he was then the head of the CIA under the Trump administration, attacked WikiLeaks and Julian as what hostile, non-state intelligence agencies. I may have that slightly garbled. And then you really saw an acceleration towards the extradition, which the Obama administration had not pushed for, what they call the New York Times problem, because, of course, what Julian and WikiLeaks did was no different from what The Guardian, El País, Le Monde, Der Spiegel all did in terms of publishing. They published this in a kind of joint project. And I think that was an important point, because although he's not charged for the release of the publication of the information in Vault 7, it's very clear that the engine of the extradition, the forces that are pushing for his extradition, come out of the CIA, and that if he is extradited and ends up in the Eastern District Court of Virginia, which is a kind of bastion of CIA, it's very close to the CIA, and the jury pool is all pulled from people who have relatives, friends, connections to the CIA and other national security agencies that are all headquartered in that area. And that's why the government wants it there, because they win those cases. I don't see, and see what Joe and others think, Craig, I don't see how they're not going to hit him with these charges. And potentially, at that point, and I think that the defense was correct in raising, not only would these charges exacerbate, though he's facing 175 years already, but then it really becomes, the potential of even the death penalty becomes possible. So that was, I thought, the most interesting aspect that I saw this afternoon. Yeah.
So when we're thinking about what could happen to Julian Assange, remember what we don't want to happen is for him to be extradited from the UK to the United States, because it would be game over for him if he were to come here to the US. We all know they would sentence him to prison, probably life in prison, God knows, and he probably would not live to be able to tell that story. But what should happen is for Julian Assange to be sent back to Australia. He needs to be freed. Like, this is wild and crazy. And I think about people like Mumia. I think about people like Daniel Hale. I mean, I think about like all of these political prisoners like Leonard Peltier. It's just insane that these people have been in prison for so long. And it's just like, all because they dared to stand up to the government, to the deep state, right? So but Julian Assange's situation is unique in the sense that he was a publisher, and it's like, you can't do your job as a publisher or as a journalist and tell the truth. So you're only allowed to repeat the State Department narrative in order to keep your position and not have the threat of being, thrown into prison. And for what? Because he revealed U.S. war crimes? He wasn't the first one. Think about the Pentagon Papers. Think about Seymour Hersh. Why do we know of Seymour Hersh? Because of the war in Vietnam, because he revealed that the U.S. soldiers were committing war crimes against the civilians in Vietnam and against children. But for whatever reason, when it comes to Julian, he was not given a pass. So it's not like this has not been done before. It has been done before. But I feel like they're trying to make an example out of Julian Assange. That's what I feel is happening here. We'll go on a little bit more here in reference to the hearing.
And of course, they gave the alleged whistleblower
40
years.
Yeah, 40 years. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And also, one of the expert witnesses, Maureen Baird, she did point out, after a question on re-examination by Mark Summers in the extradition hearing, that it is the CIA that if the charges are not aggregated to death penalty, they can make it as actually worse than death by imposing SABs anytime they like. And I think Mark Summers really pointed that out today.
And we should explain what SAMs are. So
Special Administrative Measures.
I've watched them at work,
Yes.
because they were used after 9/11, when the American government, at the behest of the Israelis, shut down all of the Palestinian activists and all of the major Palestinian organizations like the Holy Land Foundation. These people are still sitting in jail. So I covered the case of Fahad Hashmi, and he was put in isolation in the MCU in New York for 23 months. And now Fahad his crime was that he was smart and articulate and had been a leader of the Palestinian movement. At his trial, they actually played surreptitious tapes or recordings that they had of him speaking about Palestine at the university to convict him. He was doing a graduate degree, I think, at the University of London School of Economics, and his roommate had sent waterproof socks, I didn't even know such things existed, to the Taliban or Al-Qaeda or something, and had borrowed his cell phone. I mean, it was just really flimsy. But the point is, when they brought him into court, he was a zombie. He didn't know where he was. They had broken him, and they know how to break you scientifically. And of course, they're applying these psychological measure, torture, to Julian.
Yes, they are. And for those who were wondering, Julian Assange was not able to be present at the hearing because he was too sick to make it to the hearing. His health has been declining, and it's because of, obviously, like the way that they are treating him in prison. And of course, that's intentional. Solitary confinement, in my opinion, is ultimately cruel. I think that it just drives you crazy. obviously you're going to have some mental issues there. Like if you're just put into a hole, oftentimes no light of day. I don't think solitary confinement should actually be allowed in any country, right? Because I feel like it's inhumane. That's not rehabilitation, in my opinion. But that's why he wasn't actually able to be at the hearing. So we'll play a little bit more of this, and we'll have to see what happens when they make the ruling. So let's not, I don't want us to get too excited or hopeful, but I also don't want us to be too, doom and gloom either. We really don't know what is going to happen until we hear that ruling.
And so these SAMs are very pernicious. They isolate you, they restrict your ability to see the quote-unquote evidence used against you. Even your lawyers can't see it. It's extremely difficult for you even to have contact with family members. It's complete social isolation. But just to throw that out, that in the diplomatic note, which has no legal validity really, they said they won't impose SAMs on Julian. This is part of the assurances. They won't impose SAMs on Julian unless, of course, he warrants them, so they can. But it's important that we have other SAM-like measures, MCUs, management control units, that really replicate. I mean, one of the things they said in the diplomatic note is he won't go to Florence, Colorado, this high-tech supermax prison pre-trial, without saying that nobody goes to Florence pre-trial. So it's really cynical. But they have lots of ways to break you. And I also teach in the prison system and have for 14 years through Rutgers University and the college degrees. I kind of see it up close. And even there, on a smaller scale, they'll pull my students for minor, like having a cell phone, which was sold to them by the guard, of course, and throwing them in for a year, and they come out. Or they say after 6 days they start to lose it. But having taught students that come out even after a year in isolation, they don't ever fully recover. So. It's important to know that they have all sorts of mechanisms within the bureaus of prison that are designed to destroy you.
And to break you. Yeah. And that's what they've been doing to him. At one point, he wasn't even allowed to socialize with people at all. I interviewed his brother and his father. It was about 10 months ago. I interviewed them about this, and they talked about, when they finally allowed Julian Assange to be able to socialize with other prisoners. Like it's wild and crazy. And we'll have to stay tuned to see what happens with the hearing. But I did want you to hear that tidbit from Chris Hedges because he was actually able to be inside of it. Go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Todd. Trying to lead, running for Florida 04, blood red, and this 1.2 million raising unopposed. POS will win, but I have to at least try. We have to try. It's a good point there, Todd. Thank you, Roger. 2 more stories, Hedges in Maine. Yes, I do have a Maine question too. Danielle says Richard Medhurst was inside also, gave a great assessment. I'll have to check that out. I'll check it out to see if he posted it on Twitter, because I don't think Richard is on YouTube anymore. Shout out to Georgia Freckles for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Georgia a big whoop whoop in his house. LPA Film says Assange went outside the proper channels, outside of the gatekeepers. I think he was employed by legacy media. I think if he was employed by legacy media when this occurred, he would have more protection. I agree. Just Call Me Anon says solitary is designed to break the mind. Yes, indeed. If you have not had a chance to do so, folks, go ahead and smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe and share. And we're finishing up here with the Maine ballot measures. I already read the question 1 for Maine and how ballot measures work in Maine. Question 2 is pretty interesting. At least I find it interesting. And if you're complaining about spending in elections, check this one out. This is question 2 for Maine ballot measure results for 2023. Maine question 2, prohibit foreign spending in elections initiative. A yes vote supported prohibiting foreign governments or entities with at least 5% foreign government ownership or control from spending money to influence ballot measures or candidate elections. This measure was approved by 86.33%. That's a high one, man. Okay. The measure prohibited direct or indirect election spending by foreign governments, including entities with partial 5% or more equity stake, foreign government ownership or control, to influence the nomination or election of a candidate or the initiation or approval of a ballot measure. It also required disclosure on political advertisements if a foreign government or an entity that has partial foreign government ownership has control, disperses any money from for the advertisement. At the time of the election, federal law prohibited contributions, donations, and expenditures, including independent expenditures and disbursements by foreign nationals to any federal, state, or local election, but not ballot measure elections. Question 2 added the federal prohibition to state law and included ballot measure elections. Therefore, question 2 prohibited foreign spending on ballot measure elections that federal law did not prohibit. Under question 2, a violation of the law is considered a Class C crime. The penalty for an activity prohibited under this measure is up to $5,000 or double the amount of the contribution of expenditure involved in the violation, whichever is greater. It is also called on Maine's congressional delegation to support a federal constitutional amendment to ban foreign government spending in elections. Well, would you look at that? Are there any states or cities with laws regarding foreign spending? Listen to this, folks. At the time of the election, 7 states, California, Colorado, Maryland, Nevada, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Washington State prohibited foreign nationals from making contributions to ballot measure campaigns, and 2 cities, Seattle, Washington, and San Jose, California. Go to the website, scroll down and hit measure to see the makeup. Yeah, I don't see that here. So I don't know what happened there. Anywho, support. Who supported this? Actually, mostly Democrat senators, except for Richard Bennett, who's a Republican. Organizations include American Promise, Inc., Ballot Initiative Strategy Center, In Citizens United, Maine Citizens for Clean Elections, Piper Action Fund, and Represent.us. One of the arguments is voters in my district and indeed around the state are sick and tired of having their voices silenced by millions of dollars in dark money political ads each election cycle. The current level of spending, which increases every year, is poisonous to our democracy. This initiative is the antidote that Maine voters are asking for. And this did win significantly, over 80%. And then I also like to check and see if there was any campaign finance money that was spent to support or oppose it. There was over $925,000 spent to support it. And again, usually whichever one has the most money is usually the way the ballot measure will go. One of the things mentioned here from Roger, this is how we do it from the bottom up. The provision that even says to the congressional delegation that they must push this at the federal level as well is fire. This is important. And then this one about the power company, a yes vote supported creating the Pine Tree Power Company, an electric transmission and distribution utility governed by an elected board, and would allow the company to purchase and acquire all investor-owned transmission and distribution utilities in Maine, providing stationalized power, which would have been the first state in the country to have it since Nebraska pushed it in 1930 via CBI. This measure failed by 69.74%. So this is interesting. It says The initiative would have allowed for Pine Tree Power Company to purchase and acquire all investor-owned electric utilities in Maine, which includes CMP and Versant. Under the measure, the Pine Tree Power Company would have had all the powers and duties of an electric utility company and would have been expected to deliver electricity to the company's customer owners. The measure would have established the Pine Tree Power Board, which would have consisted of 13 members. 7 of the members would have been elected to represent the state Senate districts, and 6 members would have been designated expert members. This was supported by Republicans and Democrats. And note this, Senator Bernie Sanders actually supported this as well. And unions. Maine State Nurses Union supported this. Some of the organizations, Maine Public Power, Maine Youth Action, 350.org. One of the arguments that actually came from Bernie was this year, Mainers are facing price gouging and immoral disconnection notices from multinational utility companies. Power belongs in the hands of the people, not greedy corporations. Fortunately, Mainers have a rare chance to take control of an important part of their daily lives. Instead of a private power system that last year spent $187 million in profits out of the country, Mainers can have cheaper, more reliable power and help fight climate change at the same time. So this was interesting. I would like to have cheaper power here in Massachusetts. It's expensive, especially with the inflation. Who opposed this? Governor Janet T. Mills, who's a Democrat, and former officials, again, bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans. Corporations, of course, that opposed it. Avangrid Inc., Central Maine Power Company, Enmax Energy Corporation, and Versant Power. Unions, IBEW Local 567, one for example. And some of the organizations, Americans Tax Reform, Conservation Law Foundation, to name a few. And one of the arguments came from Governor Janet Mills, who said, I strongly believe that Maine consumers deserve high quality, reliable, and competent service. Question 3 is a hostile takeover that will cost billions of dollars to Maine ratepayers and inject partisanship into the delivery of our power. Interesting. Campaign finance money. There was over 1 million spent to support it, and over 39 million. Jesus Christ. Sorry, guys. Think about what we could do if we took this money and put this into mutual aid instead. Sorry. Over 39 million spent to oppose it. Very interesting take here, folks. And then one note here. With a total of a little over 1 million registered to vote in the state of Maine, only 406,362 voted on this initiative. Despite the fact that on even year elections, the total voter turnout is anywhere from 600,000 to almost 800,000. For some reason, they thought it was a good idea to place this on the ballot in an odd number year election. Odd. Yet this would be the best year to get on the ballot. What he means by that is they placed this on the ballot in 2023 instead of putting it on the ballot in 2024 when you will have more turnout. That is interesting. And the final measure here is question 4, right to repair law vehicle data access requirement initiative. This is huge. We actually passed this in Massachusetts in 2020. The right to repair law actually is a big deal. So let's see if Maine did this in a similar way as Massachusetts did. It goes on to say here, a yes vote supported requiring motor vehicle manufacturers to standardize onboard vehicle diagnostics and make access to vehicle systems available to owners and third-party independent shop for repairs. So similar to Massachusetts, this is a big win for people who have small businesses, right? Yeah, man, share that data. And I just want to address this part here. The initiative provided for motor vehicle owners and independent repair facilities in Maine to have access to the vehicle onboard diagnostic systems. It established an independent entity to administer access to vehicle generated data, as well as to ensure that access to this data is secure and develop policies related to access of this data. The initiative provided that manufacturers would be required to equip vehicles that use a telematics system with an owner-authorized access platform and required this platform to send commands to in-vehicle components for purposes of maintenance, diagnostics, and repair. As of 2023, 4 other states, California, Colorado, New York, and Minnesota, enacted right to repair legislation. They forgot Massachusetts on here. The right to repair laws in California, maybe because of their legislation. The right to repair laws in California, Minnesota, and New York pertain to electronic and digital equipment, while the right to repair law in Colorado pertain to agricultural equipment. Interesting. So, this measure was approved by 84.38%. I'll be damned. This is a good one, guys. The right to repair, just FYI. This is what I'm more familiar with. One of the organizations that supported it was Repair Association and Consumer Access to Repair Coalition. One of the arguments made by Kate Kahn says this issue is about choice. Consumers want the ability to choose where to take their cars or trucks to be repaired. They do not want to be told they can only take their autos to expensive dealerships. My mom went through this. The previous car that my mom had, she had to do that. She could only take her car to the dealership to be repaired, and her car had a lot of issues off and on throughout the years, and it's more expensive to do that, right? It's easier. It's actually easier. I feel like it's easier and it's cheaper to take your car to the mom and pop shop down the street, right? They don't charge you as much. Whenever you have to take your car to the dealership to get it repaired, they really rip you off. They nickel and dime you for everything. So I really do appreciate the right to repair. And then opposition towards this was State Representative Tiffany Roberts, who was a Democrat, organization, the Alliance for Automotive Innovations. So one of the arguments was Mainers already can have their car repaired by any repair shop they choose. And all the information needed to diagnose and repair a vehicle today is also already made available to all vehicle repair shops. Well, obviously not to all of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put forth this measure. Like, give me a break, man. Give me a break. So let's check out the amount that was spent in reference to campaign finance. Jesus. So you guys see all this money, over $4.9 million spent to support it. Over $116,000 was spent to oppose this ballot measure. And Roger added a note here, peep the dollar spent in support compared to oppose. I never thought the bad guys would get swamped like this. A lot of times with these ballot measures, whichever side has the most money is the side that usually wins. Sometimes states will not feel comfortable, organizations will not feel comfortable putting forth a measure on the ballot if they don't have enough support for it, because big money will always come in and try to stop it. But this time it did not. So right to repair to me is just, it's a no-brainer now. I wish everybody had this, to keep it real. And then the last one, this is a ratification. Main question 5, change time period of judicial review of initiative petitions amendment. A yes vote supported the constitutional amendment to change the timeline for the judicial review of initiative pensions. This includes changing the review period from within 100 days of a petition being filed to within 100 business days of it being filed, and allowing the judicial review period to begin 30 days after a general election when the initiative petition is filed within 30 days of a general election. This measure was ratified by 57.70%. who supported it. Bipartisan support across the board, actually, here. And then one of the arguments here, LD 1012 in conjunction with LD 233, heard last month, is an important bill that will protect the integrity of Maine elections by smoothing out the workflow requirements placed on a small election staff without creating a significant impact on the petitions process or increase costs to the Senate. Specifically, LD 1012 changes the time period for judicial review of the validity of a written petition from 100 days after submission of the petition to 100 days after the deadline for submission to the elections division. This bill does not change the amount of time a petition campaign has to gather signatures, nor the lifespan of those signatures. Interesting. There was zero money spent to support or oppose. One note here from Roger was that this was done to lengthen the time for signature verification, since when you include weekends, when no one is there, they had it that those days are still counted, despite no signature verification is taking place on weekends. We will finish with question 6 because I'm looking at the time here on Sunday. We'll get back to that. So I will be live this Sunday, guys, and then we will go from there. So let me go to some of the questions here. Thank you for the super chat, Cobra. There will be riots if they outright. So they will give Assange a slow death. They're like, yeah, I know. I don't even want to think of it that way, but I do feel like that's the plan. Thank you for the super chat, Hristos. Would you continue this work in the same way if they end up killing Assange? I mean, my work was this way before. Like, that's the thing. My work was this way before I started advocating for Julian Assange. So just FYI. And thank you for the super chat. I am Thor. We have tried to contact you. Go to wearethor.org. We're running a veteran candidate in every congressional seat in the U.S. All our candidates sign a contract. All our candidates sign a contract. If they do not follow through on their promises, then pay back donations. That's interesting. If you emailed me, email me again, because my email was full. I'm sorry. It's a mess. Not that it's full that it can't accept more emails. I'm just saying I have a lot to go through. So just email me again. My email is included in the description section of all of my videos. And that is it tonight, guys. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm outies. Gotta head out. If you want to know more, go to the website. Yeah, it's best to just email it to me. I'm just telling you right now, it's best to just email it to me. Email the information so that way I don't forget. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'll be live again Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Hope you learned a bit. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.